Well, it's gardening season, and I want to show you a little bit of back to Eden gardening and what you can do if you don't have wood chips. Here's a very large yard, and almost every yard will have an area where the trees are, and the leaves are, and the pine needles. And you see, this is a perfect combination of leaves and pine needles. And you can definitely use these as part of your Back to Eden garden if you're doing the concept of layering. When you do this, you want to remove the big sticks. You don't want anything like this. Is okay. This is okay, but there's, you'll see here, like, you don't want this, something this size. You don't want something this size here, okay? But what you want to do is just rake all this stuff up, and then I'm going to go over to the garden and show you exactly how we're doing our layering method according to the Back to Eden method. All right? And here's also an easy way to haul your stuff too. Old bed sheets. We're just laying these out and we're raking the leaves onto them. And then we're going to be transporting them over to the garden area. So, be creative. Be creative. Think outside the box. We can get a lot on here, which is awesome. And then we dump them over in the garden area. Now, some of you may be asking about pine needles. Oh, we can't use pine needles because they're so acidic. Now, some of you may be asking about pine needles, using that as mulch, and I did a video on that too. Pine needles, when they see what these look like. There is no acid in these. These are pine needles that are completely broken down. So there's no, they're not going to add, make your soil acidic. That's an impossibility because already they're decomposed. And even pine needles that fall from the fresh trees don't have enough acid in there to add to the acidity to your garden. So that's kind of an old wife's tale. So don't be afraid about using pine needles. They make really, really good mulch. And of course, then we have the leaves, which are excellent mulch too. And so we have a combination here. Now, as I go over there to the garden, we want to balance our Back to Eden garden with nitrogen and carbon. And leaves are, I think, 30 to 50 on the scale of nitrogen. So they're very low in nitrogen. And we use the leaves as primary source of our carbon, okay? Browns are carbons, greens are going to be your nitrogen source. And the beautiful thing about using wood chips is when you chop up a tree that has leaves and bark, you're going to get a perfect ratio, and that's why the Back to Eden garden wood chip method works so well. But since we're doing leaves today and pine needles, we also need to balance that out with some nitrogen. So you see how we tilled that up. It's just lawn, so we just till it up. We don't have to pull any weeds. And then you take cardboard, remove all the plastics, remove all the tape, remove anything that's not going to decompose, and you lay down the cardboard, and then you put your mulch on top of it. Using the cardboard, it's a great source of carbon again, because it acts as a weed barrier, and so as it decomposes, it kind of decomposes the weeds, the green weeds, the source of nitrogen underneath it, and it makes a perfect combination. So that's why using cardboard is really beneficial. Okay, so as I'm hauling back and forth, we'll talk a little bit about nitrogen too. The gardens need nitrogen, and I think that's probably one of the biggest newbies having enough nitrogen or understanding nitrogen for a garden. So nitrogen, plants need NPK, which is nitrogen, potassium, and phosphorus, and they need that perfect combination so that when they grow, they can have access to the amino acids and the proteins, and this is what it's like the building blocks for a plant. So you can always tell when you're deficient in nitrogen in a garden, because simply put, the plant will tell you, like, I'm wilty, I'm yellow, I look like I'm small and stunted. And see, it doesn't have those building blocks, right? It's just like with us human beings. We need those amino acids and those proteins. So that's why we need that perfect combination. So it's great that we're hauling all this carbon, but we don't want to get too much carbon, because there is a balance. We don't need as much nitrogen as we do carbon, but we need that perfect balance. So where can we get that? In nature, the best free source of nitrogen is glass. So when you cut your grass, and there's a lot of grass here, save those grass clippings and use those for your garden, and that's going to give you some nitrogen. That way you don't have to buy things like fish emulsion, or I think a cornmeal is a good source. Coffee grounds. If you're a coffee drinker, save your coffee grounds and put them in the garden. Believe it or not, that is a great source of nitrogen. So now some people will buy a blood and bone meal. Again, but you're purchasing. I'm not about like spending a lot of money, right? I don't want to spend a lot of money. So what you can do at the end of the season and during the wintertime is you can actually also grow a cover crop. And a cover crop then can be tilled under into the soil, and it gives you nitrogen. So you'll see a lot of gardens like covered with a lot of, like, you may think it's weeds, or like, what are they doing over there? Well, they have a cover crop, and it's really important to the nitrogen source of that soil. So soil is what makes your garden, and you can get it tested, but I'm not a big believer in testing. I just believe in, God has given us every component to balance the soil, and you don't have to have a garden degree or be a master gardener to figure this out. I kind of have to laugh, because I've met so many. Oh, I've got a master's garden. I'm a master gardener. Well, I ain't a master gardener, and I've had some pretty big gardens and fruitful gardens, and I didn't go to no class, and I didn't get no degree. And I'm not saying that goes to waste, but when you keep it simple, and you just you reflect God's perfect recipe and pattern and plan here, it's pretty simple. I don't know, just that's how I feel about it.